What's up guys, Jack here, and today we are going to be checking out the brand new GroveBass plugin by Submission Audio. Now, the mind behind this plugin is Mr. Simon Grove. If you are not familiar with Simon Grove, he is a wonderful, wonderful bass player, playing for the likes of Pliny and the Helix Nebula, but he's also one of the best, if not the best, mixing / mastering / producer, engineer for all the kind of modern prog, but also some of the heavier stuff, and of course some of the more modern kind of prog fusion stuff. He's just got wonderful ears, and this plugin is essentially a recreation of the bass which he uses, the LaFay, and some of the tones which he likes to use. I believe they've like meticulously sampled this to get a very similar sound to what Simon would use. I absolutely love this plugin. Before we dive into the interface, I have been using this on pretty much everything since I've got it. I just really like how we have so many options in terms of articulations like slaps, pops, and there's some really cool humanization features in there. It's not just for heavy music. You can certainly make it work with different styles, which I absolutely love. So without further ado, let's check out the interface of the plugin then. So first of all, you have Simon's LaFay headless bass up here. Forgive me if I'm pronouncing that wrong. This is totally interactive. So you can visually see where these notes are being played on the fretboard. I absolutely love this interface. Let's just point out that it looks really smart. It looks really cool. You have down here 5 different tonal options. So we have a DI sound. Let's just hear what that sounds like. I can imagine a lot of people would like to maybe reamp that with, say, maybe some of the Darkglass stuff or some other VSTs. You have a clean setting, which I was using on the track you heard at the beginning there. That sounds wonderful. We have overdrive, distortion, and then a lead sound. This kind of has like a bit of chorus, I think, on there, and some reverb, maybe some delay. Chorus and reverb, I think, but that is really cool. I love the way that the lights change up at the top here. That's just a nice little touch. We have the mixer here as well. So this will change depending on what setting you are on down here or which tone you've chosen. So like, for example, on the lead sound here, we have the option of the bright switch. You have tone, compression, girth, and effects. But if I was to go to, say, the distortion over here, then you notice the effects have disappeared, and we have the option of drive now, so we could add more distortion to that. On the DI, of course, there is no control over it. I'm sure you'd want to process that sound perhaps afterwards. My favorite here was the clean option. It's worth pointing out that up here at the top of the plugin, there are some presets built in. I really like the super bright clean sound. Just adds a load of spank to the bass tone. Moving on to the 3 tabs at the bottom then. Down here we have articulation. Now this currently says finger alternate, which is the default. That's essentially the right hand switching between these 2 fingers. But you'll see as I play the program MIDI part for this track, watch how that changes in real time, and also on the fretboard you can visually see this. So we're seeing the slaps, the pops, things like that down there, whatever you program with your key switches. Okay, so with this next tab, we have alternate picking. Now, I think most people would probably prefer to have this set to automatic. Automatic essentially will spread out these alternate pick notes quite evenly, how most bass players probably would approach it. But if you want more control, you can go into these subdivisions. For this particular bass line, I preferred 16th notes here because it's quite a busy bass line, as we'll hear as we go on. But yeah, you can just have an extra level of control of where that's applied if you would like. On the final tab then, this is the really interesting one. So first of all, you have this Doom switch, which I haven't used, but I assume that this is a reference to maybe the video game where Your velocities, you would want them to sound very machine-like. On that video game, everything is programmed to sound like a bullet, I guess. There's not much differentiation there in between notes. So that's obviously an option if you want that in your style. To further expand on this, we have the humanize knob here. Now, if we were to spin this all the way to the left, our velocities would essentially become like a machine. It's going to be super smooth. There's not going to be much differentiation between the notes whatsoever. As we slowly move around it, you're getting into humanization territory there. So there's going to be some slight differentiations. And then eventually you get to bassist, which is actually what I preferred for the kind of style of music which you heard at the beginning of the video. I like these changes in velocities. You know, I like to hear kind of like how a real bass player would approach this in terms of dynamics, especially for this style. I know for other styles, like heavier styles, then maybe you wouldn't want that, but for this, it just seemed to work really well. Finally, this control we have here is called the position control. Now, this acts as almost like a virtual capo. So as we move up, you can see the light is moving down the neck. Now, this forces the bass VST to play whatever notes you have programmed within the position that you've kind of blocked off here. This is especially useful if you want to have a different tone. You know, we'll get onto this when we look at forced key switches or forced strings here, but this essentially moves where these notes will be played, unless of course there's a note that's programmed that is below the range. If we heard this track without this forced position shift, we are in the key of B minor here. You'll see that there'll be loads of open strings. Check out the bass here. If I use this forced position up to the 5th fret then, seeing as we're in the key of B, watch how now it will kind of control all of these notes within that area that we've marked off. So you're going to see a lot of movement between that 5th and 7th fret. And of course, that changes the sound of what is being played. Seeing as this instrument has been meticulously sampled, I believe, we should note that when you play on guitar or bass, the tone of a note changes dramatically depending on which string it's played, but also where on the fretboard. You know, a note, say like the note B, for example, if you are on, say, the low E string and you play that at the 7th fret, that sounds totally different from playing the note B on the 2nd fret on the A string. I think that's a genius move, and it just helps to make this sound more organic and more like a real bass. So massive hats off to Submission Audio and Simon for doing that. We move on to the next tab then. This is where we have our key switch map. So you can see here we have multiple key switch options, things like slaps, slides, harmonics. Finger alternate is actually set to latch. So what that means is that, say you programmed a slap, if the next note then that is played by the instrument, that will now be back automatically to finger alternate, which is really cool. You could set any of these, I think, to latch mode. So say like if you wanted every note to be slapped, it just really speeds up the work process, I find anyway. And then over this side, this is where we have the forced string option. So this is really cool if you want a specific tone, or also if you want to program something that sounds more realistic. We'll check that out in a second. But anyway, moving on to this next tab, we have the bass tuning. So you could tune that however you would like, and you can save different options here. Finally, we have the bend range. So that's how much you can bend notes if you would like, I guess, on the controller down on your keyboard. But anyway, I wanted to just point out something with that forced string option there. So we'd already seen the forced position, But if we listen through to this track, there is one moment where there's a crazy line. In fact, maybe I should let you just hear what this isolated bass track sounds like in itself, so we can hear all of those pops, slaps, and articulations, how real it kind of sounds. So hopefully you could hear there the tons of, you know, slaps, pops, dead notes, and that little slide at the end. It just sounds really cool, and it is perfect for demos. You know, for a lot of people, maybe this is the way to do it. If you don't have a budget for, say, a bass player, or you can't get those tones, this is going to get you there. I think it sounds really, really cool. There's a line in this track which is an absolute pain. I'm not even sure if it's realistically playable on bass. I'm sure there's loads who probably can actually, now that I say that. But it's around here. Now, when I first programmed that into this, you could see there was tons of open strings and the positions were jumping all over the fretboard, essentially. So what I did in the MIDI is I used this 4-string option with the key switches. So essentially, all the key switches, for those who don't know, is you would, underneath your note that you want heard, you would put whatever the note is here. So say if you wanted like a pop, then you would put F sharp -2 underneath it, and that will give you the pop. But here I was using the 4-string section to make this kind of more realistic. So I tried to think how I play it on guitar and then apply it to a bass, and you'll see that it's trying to keep things more in set positions, really, which is more like what a bass player would play. Still a stupidly hard line, I can imagine, to play, but that obviously changes the sound as well. When I first heard this, there were loads of open strings, and that takes away from the realism, really. Like, I don't think a bass player would be able to jump from a high position to an open string to, you know, like a note in a totally different position. It just wouldn't make logical sense. So I actually wanted to go into that extra level of detail to get not only the sounds, but also to make it more realistic in terms of the playing. And it does a great job of that. That kind of sums up everything to do with it. So the key switches, like I say, with the slaps and pops, you can really go in depth with this. And I think it sounds really, really organic. It does sound almost like a real bass player. You know, it's obviously there's little things that with any kind of VSTs, you're not going to get exactly the same sound, but this is honestly the closest that I've got so far. What did you guys think of the sounds then anyway? Did you enjoy the track at the beginning? That was Lark Lane from way back on Escapades. Now that feels like forever ago. Yeah, what did you think of the tones? Do you like the articulations that are available to you? Is this something that you would use? I know for me, this is certainly what I'm going to use on pretty much everything moving forward. So a massive congrats again to Submission Audio and to Simon Grove. This is GroveBass. It sounds insane. Till next time, guys, my name is Jack Gardiner. Cheers.